Hi, everybody. It's Jay, and I am back in the booth again for another sneak peek video preview for this week's audiobook release here on Say with Jay. This week, I'm really excited about our new release because it's the first book in Jessie Gussman's Cowboy Crossing Western Sweet Romance series. The book is Best Friends in the Show Me State. We're really excited about getting this book and the whole series here on Say with Jay. And I'll have a little bit more to say about it in a bit and our preview, but I wanted to share just a couple of thoughts about a devotion that I read this week. I've been reading Tony Dungy's book, An Uncommon Life. Tony Dungy, who you may or may not know, is a former head coach for the Indianapolis Colts football team. And he's a man of great faith, and the book is about his journey, his family, being a coach in the league and sharing his faith with his players and other coaches. And the edition of the book that I'm reading is a day-by-day version. It's been split into 365 parts, so you can read it in the form of a daily devotion. And one of the ones I read this past week was a great message about the intertwining between grace and good works. Here, we've talked about good works and acts of kindness and being kind and things like that before, but it's always great to be reminded that the Bible is really, really clear that no amount of good works alone will get you into heaven. In Ephesians, Paul writes to the church at Ephesus that we're saved by the grace of God alone, that no amount of works will buy your way into heaven. But that's not to say they're not important. For in the book of James, James writes that what are good works except for ways to show our faith? And that's a wonderful message that the good works you do, acts of kindness, acts of service, just being kind, is a way to demonstrate your salvation, your grace, a little bit of God to other people. Now, a lot of times it's easy to get a little discouraged with the world like it is, whether or not your actions really matter. Well, I'm here to tell you they do, because when you do an act of kindness, an act of service, just a kind word for someone, they're far more likely to go and spread that themselves. And when they do, kindness can take over our world. And as an example of a way to demonstrate how it can spread and build very easily, I have a bit of a brain teaser that I also heard recently for you. I have here a normal sheet of copy paper. It is 8.5 by 11 inches, not that that's important, and it is 0.004 inches thick. Thank you, Google. Now, the brain teaser is this. Well, first, a little demonstration. If you fold the sheet of paper in half, first, you notice that it's now 2 sheets thick. If you fold it in half again, it's now 4 sheets thick. Fold it again. It's 8 sheets thick, and I think you see, how that progresses. So here's the brain teaser. If you have a large enough sheet of paper that you can fold easily, continually, how many times would you have to fold this sheet of paper to reach the moon? While you're thinking about your answer, the moon, although the distance can change relative to your position on Earth and its position in its orbit, the distance for me right now, where I am on our planet, is roughly 250,400 miles. Again, thank you, Google. So, now, with that bit of information, how many times do you think you'd have to fold your sheet of paper to reach 250,000 miles away? Would you say 100,000? A million? 10 million? A billion? What if the answer was 42? Only 42. Believe it or not, that's correct. And I can show you. As we showed before, every time you fold your sheet of paper, the thickness in sheets of paper doubles. It starts off really slow, but as it starts to build, it ramps up pretty quick. And by the time you reach 42 folds, your stack of paper is now 4,398,046,511,104 sheets of paper thick. Multiply that times the 0.004 inches and convert that to miles, you've got 277,654 miles. That's right, you overshot the moon by 27,000 miles. The point of this exercise, of course, is to show that when you do things that can spread exponentially, it's a lot less work than you think. And with that, I would encourage everybody to keep being kind, keep performing acts of service and acts of kindness for other people. Because if we do, and we can keep kindness growing exponentially, we can cover the world with it, to the moon and back. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Best Friends in the Show Me State. Best Friends in the Show Me State is the story of Marlowe Glass and Clark Hudson. They've been best friends forever. But when violent weather strikes their hometown of Cowboy Crossing, and it sparks an unexpected attraction, will they risk their friendship for a chance at lifetime love? Now, you know what I'm going to tell you. You've got to come back this Friday to find out. But for now, here is a sample of Best Friends in the Show Me State. Hope you enjoy it, then come back and see us here on Say with Jay.
Clark? Marlowe's voice was even softer, with even more hesitation and insecurity in it. He almost didn't want to answer her, pretend he hadn't heard. He was afraid of what she was going to ask, and he didn't even know why. He couldn't do that to her. Yeah? Please be careful. Up until that point, he assumed that the heat and the softness and the tingles were all him. Products of the storm and fear, of course, but all him. With that slight hesitation and the insecure note in her voice, that pleading almost, he wondered if maybe she felt a little of that too. That the storm had affected them both that way. And suddenly he worried that their relationship might have shifted. That whatever was outside destroyed by the tornado was only an outward manifestation of the inward shift and possible destruction that had happened between them this evening, tonight, in the dark of the cellar. Or Marlowe had gone from being his best friend and slipped away from him just a little, because neither one of them could go down that path of attraction, because that's what it felt like. I will. He meant it, too, because if anything happened to him, his family, of course, would take care of Marlowe, but she would be completely alone in the world. He didn't want that for her. She'd already been through enough. He grabbed the latch on the door. It didn't have a knob like a regular door, and lifted it, pulling. He shone his phone around, not sure what he expected, but everything looked normal. Looks good out here. I'm going to the steps and walking up." "You promised." She did not need to remind him of his promise. He knew exactly what he'd said. He'd be careful. He walked slowly because he wasn't sure about the structure of the house. He assumed everything was okay. Everything looked the same as it had an hour ago. Was it even an hour? The storm probably hadn't lasted that long. They talked and sang, and time flew by without them even realizing it. He reached the cellar steps and carefully went up. There seemed to be some kind of heavy anticipation in the air. Maybe anticipation was the wrong word. Heavy foreboding. Like in a horror movie before the murderer shows up. He shook that feeling, finished climbing the stairs, and pushed the door open. Again, it felt anticlimactic as he shone his cell phone flashlight around the kitchen. Nothing had changed. Everything was exactly the way it had been when he had shut the door behind him and run down the stairs with Huck. He turned around and called down the cellar steps. "Everything looks fine up here. I'm going to step outside and look around a bit. Are you okay?" He had to strain to hear her answered, "Yes." He considered staying. There was no need for him to go out. There was no one close by. The town was a mile away, and there were plenty of people there, although if there had been a tornado and it had hit the town, they could use help digging out, and time would be of the essence. But he'd never heard the siren, so they probably hadn't been struck by a tornado. But still, he needed to figure out what that crashing had been first, before he left to go help anyone else, and he wouldn't leave if Marlowe wasn't okay. He reached the door and opened it, stepping out onto the porch, which was still there. The ice cream bucket that had skittered across earlier in the evening was gone, he noted, and he shone the flashlight back and forth on the wooden floor. But everything else looked fine. Even the sky had started to clear, and he could see stars as he stepped off the porch and down the steps. Still, something didn't feel right. It just didn't quite feel the way it normally did. It took a minute for him to process, shifting and searching, before he realized the big oak tree that stood beside his house all of his life was no longer standing. It was lying, not quite horizontal to the ground, but almost. Marlowe's house was holding it up.
Hi, this is Jay, and thanks for listening. If you're ready for another great audiobook, here's one we think you might like. Or check out the playlist with all our latest releases. Don't forget to subscribe to Say with Jay, give this video a thumbs up, and tell us what you liked in the comments.